Hi, welcome back, not necessarily to you, but to me. I've been away for 4 months, which is kind of long, and in this video I will talk about I wanted to share a new perspective that I've gained recently, something I thought about that is also going to explain a little bit why I wasn't uploading that much. The word of today is depression, and it's a scary word. The word of today is depression, and it's a scary word. I don't necessarily like that word. But it's more specifically about not actually having depression. So this video is targeted to anyone who is currently suffering from mild forms of depression, not the major depressive disorder, which I believe that is truly depression. All in all, there's this trend, this surge in popularity of anxiety and depression. You know, we hear a lot of young people, especially young people like my generation, maybe your generation if you're 17, 16, 18, I don't really know, and people in their 30s, but less up there, mostly young people. And it seems everyone is depressed. Not everyone, but a whole lot of people are depressed and anxious. And these past months I've been dealing with depression. But the thing is, I don't really think that it is depression, and I don't really think that our generation is depressed. I think that we've been using the word depression a little too lightly, a little too often, to explain something very profound, but it's just not the right word. And I think it's important to know that distinction. Depression and anxiety are mental illnesses, and when you have them, you have an irrational response to your reality. And the word here, the key word, is irrational. It doesn't make any sense. So when you have depression, you could have attained your dream, you could have lots of loving people around you, you could love a lot of people, find things deeply interesting, have a busy life, but also have lots of moments of self-care, and all of a sudden it hits you out of nowhere and you relapse and you struggle with depression. It is irrational in that case because there is no known reason that would explain the dip in your brain. I believe it is chemical. Whereas what I am feeling, and what I believe a lot of my generation, and maybe your generation, are feeling, is mostly heartbreak. I have been struggling with sadness and heartbreak and grief and loss, not concerning someone, but mostly concerning what I thought this world was, or what I hope this world would be or become, and realizing that my ideals do not mesh with the harsh reality of what is. And the feeling, the states that this creates in me, which is sadness, hopelessness, despair, is actually a very rational response to my reality. There are reasons why I am feeling this way. I can pinpoint them, I know them, I can share them. And I think that is the distinction between just feeling negative emotions and being depressed. Why is this important, really? Yeah. Well, the first thing I would say is that when you use depression, when you're actually really, really sad and heartbroken, it makes the negative emotions into enemies. It makes them become something that's irrational, because that's what you would expect from a mental illness. It would mean that your negative feelings have no value or no place in your life, and you should ignore them, fix them, not listen to them, and try and get better. Whereas when you look at it as heartbreak and sadness, the method to heal is different. One, it's acceptance. So I'm a human being and I have negative emotions, which is kind of expected when you are living. And also you have to lean into these emotions to actually heal them when it's sadness and heartbreak. And so, and the last thing is that there is a possibility of not going back to these emotions ever if you learn to accept these realities that really hurt you. Which means that with depression, whereas you don't really have any control over it, maybe with medication and therapy and exercise, but all in all, it controls you. It's a mental illness, right? That's very, very hard. But with deep sadness and heartbreak, even if it's so hurtful, there is a possibility of gaining control over it when you lean into it. I'm gonna get personal here because I've noticed on the channel that you respond really well to my very personal stories, even if it's super scary to put them on the YouTube. I'm gonna do it anyway. So my sadness, my deep heartbreak that I have been thinking is depression. Well, if you just go, like, if I go see a psychologist or a doctor, they would mostly say like, ooh, you're relapsing, like you're struggling with depression. But because of the things I've told you earlier, what I explained, we now know that it's not actually depression, it is deep heartbreak. You know, I mean, I do have a mental illness, mental disorder, which is ADHD, and even then you could see it in a different way. But, you know, I was diagnosed with ADHD, so whatever. And anxiety. Anxiety, I would say, is like the biggest thing that I have to deal with. Obviously, this makes me sad because I am tired. I am tired of constantly pushing myself and trying to be courageous. Waking up every day with the same fears and irrational thoughts is so draining. But this anxiety thing, I can definitely manage. Like, I really can. It's manageable. It sucks, but it's, it sucks, but it's manageable. The things that are really, really bothering me, and not just bothering me, you know, I can like feel like a zombie for days. It really, like, the best way I could explain how I feel is if you watched the trailer Lucy in the Sky. I haven't seen the movie yet, but it's truly how I feel. I haven't seen Earth with my own eyes, but I feel like I kind of have. I feel like I've seen the whole galaxy. You know what I mean? I feel like I've seen the Earth and how tiny, minuscule, tiny I am. And when you realize that, I don't think that the brain is made to have that realization. I don't think it's really able to cope that well with that realization because it's still such a new one. Maybe in a few generations we'll be able to deal with it, but I think that right now, not at all. And so that realization that life is so, in a sense, meaningless and very tiny and has no real purpose, and then struggling because you have to do all these things that you don't like, and you see society with all its demands and all it requires of you and the people you love, and how it makes you and the people you love unhappy, and you rebel against that, and you don't like the way our culture makes us feel miserable. Well, that of course creates sadness. At least it creates sadness in me. And then you have these big problems because of technology, because of the internet and social media. We are so aware of everything that's going on, like too much information. I don't think our brain is capable either of coping with that much information. You know, we now know that the Earth is in trouble, and that's a freaking big problem to have on your shoulder. And I think that if you're just a tad bit sensitive like I am, and like I believe a lot of people who are struggling with said depression, mild depression, are just very sensitive beings, it's just very difficult to stay kind of untouched by these events. And we see a lot of injustice, and I made a video, I hate how I say that word, but I have no idea how to say it differently. Video that's called 10 External Obstacles to Happiness. And when you refer to that, when you're sensitive like I am, it just deeply affects you. It just does. And it makes my philosophy of life and the way I want to go about my life very, very different than the people around me that I love. So it also kind of creates a sense of loneliness, because I never see myself really reflected around me. I don't see myself reflected in social media. Sometimes I do, when I find something that's a little more aware, a little more awake. I can connect with it, but mostly I don't necessarily connect. And it's not a, oh my God, I'm such a special person. It's not that. It's just that I am very deeply involved in this act of being my truth, like feeling my truth. It's just harder for me to pretend that my truth is not different at all from the truth of others, in a sense. So I do struggle with sadness a lot. I do. Despair, hopelessness for our future, wondering why I feel so lonely, why is life so meaningless. It's a bit like an existential crisis that just never ends. And right now I'm very rational, like I'm talking in a way that I don't seem that perturbed by what I'm experiencing, but I am. It's just that I have this really exceptional coping skill of rationalizing my emotions, maybe a little too quickly. But it's something I do that allows me to speak this way and not cry or not like freak out or stuff, you know what I mean? It's a coping mechanism. All in all, this message, this video, was to say that maybe you're not depressed, maybe you're just heartbroken. And like I said before, it's very important that you realize that, because it's not the same healing method. You can regain control over it. I think that if you find people who have the same sadness that you do, who are heartbroken as much as you are about the things that you're heartbroken about, I think that's very soothing and very important. So what I can say is that I understand. I don't necessarily know why you are so sad or heartbroken, but I understand how sensitive you are. And I don't think you should be feeling negative about it. Especially now, these days, it's a lot about getting better, staying better, getting better. You know, we're kind of bombarded by these messages that we're supposed to follow our passion, and if we just are really authentic, we will be happy. And when you're that person who's just so touched by what's going on around you, which is normal because a lot of things are kind of going to shit, it gets harder to actually be yourself. You don't want to be the party pooper. You don't necessarily want to share your truth with the people around you because it's negative. So it's kind of easier to just say that you're depressed. It's easier, people get it a little better, like, oh, they're sick. Like, meh, that's why. Whereas your emotions and what you're thinking, these things are actually very valid and important in these times. So I don't necessarily know what the message of this thing is. Even myself, it just kind of flew out of me. I'm at the 14-minute mark right now, so I should get done like quite quickly. But if I had to say a message to this, it would be that, one, I think that being very sensitive is an amazing thing. I think I love people who are sensitive, even if I don't necessarily like it in myself. I love people who are. I think that the message of this is mostly to just accept your heartbreak and explore the reasons why you're feeling so sad, and try and work with perspective. Or the next video I'm gonna do, I believe, is going to be like, once you've accepted that you're actually suffering from heartbreak and sadness and hopelessness and despair, what do you actually do? And that's going to be very interesting to me to explore that. That was it, really. I don't know what to make of this video, but I did it because I really like to do what I want. Yeah, I like it. Tell me what you think, if you'd like. Did this make any sense? Do you connect with this kind of distinction between depression and heartbreak? If so, why? And I look forward to seeing you for the next video, which I'm going to film right away, to know how to deal with heartbreak and sadness. Oh, thank you very much for watching. Lots of love for you, I hope.